Hello, Starshine. My name is Liz, and this is my channel, Simsational Stories. If you have not seen my videos before, and you enjoy this one, please like and subscribe, and maybe check out my other social media as well. I'm on both Facebook and Twitter. All relevant links are in the description below, and of course, if you're a Sims player and you'd like to download any of my characters, just search the hashtag Simsational Stories on the Sims 4 gallery. All original content is created by This Is Not Eric. Finally, before I begin my Simsational story, I'd like to issue this blanket content and trigger warning. The following story is just Sims, hey. I'm not going to apologise for treating them terribly, if that's what I've done. But I do want to assure you now that although I mean absolutely no harm, I completely understand if you feel unable to consume my content. Many loves, and we will catch each other on the internet elsewhere. Okay, so now we've gotten that over with. Let's go. Today's story is from Audrey Whitman, the Audacious Maid, and we're at chapter 10. If you have not seen previous chapters and would like to catch up, there are playlists available on my channel so you can hear the entire story in chronological order. The rest of us are going to move on from where we left off last time though, so without further ado. Once upon a time, a beautiful, idealistic young woman married the man of her dreams. They were pregnant with their first child, and Audrey couldn't wait to see how their lives together would unfold. Anton Lewis was a rising officer in the armed forces, and she just knew in her heart that he would be successful, that they would be successful. 4.5 years later, and she had been half right. Anton was a decorated military hero, the youngest general in over 50 years, and he himself was only 40 years old. His career was flourishing. Their marriage, however, was floundering. Anton had a list of complaints a mile long, which only just began with Audrey being a terrible housekeeper. It wasn't her fault. She used to keep the apartment quite clean, but ever since their daughter had been born, Audrey had sort of let things slip. She had been so preoccupied with parenting, and then Anton had left for Mount Komorabi, leaving her completely alone. She'd become so depressed that she had given up on housework. Not just housework. Upon returning from his military deployment, Anton had been frustrated to find that he suddenly had a wife that was rejecting his marital advances. This had never happened before. He had been distant while he was gone, but surely that would make her want him all the more. Unless she was cheating on him. Once the idea was in his head, Anton couldn't get it out of there. It all made sense now. The reason the house was always so dirty wasn't that parenting was that hard. Other mothers managed just fine. But no, Audrey was probably going out all the time behind his back while he was at work. Who knew if Cassandra was even his child? Audrey begged Anton not to even go there. Of course Cassandra was his baby. She was their baby, their little love child that they had created together all those years ago. How could Anton even think? This was breaking her heart. Things had been awful, and she was sorry she hadn't felt up to much, but she had not ever and was not cheating on him. He had to believe her. Anton wasn't really sure what he believed. Audrey had always been so in love with him and so easy to be with. They'd had a few issues here and there, but ultimately she'd always respected him and been a good wife. He was pretty much certain that she wouldn't have cheated before he went to Mount Komorabi. But what about while he was there? Anton had certainly cheated on Audrey while he was deployed overseas, so he was well aware of how easy it was to let these sort of things happen. One thing led to another. He understood that. He reasoned to himself that if Audrey would just admit it, then maybe he could too, and they could move on in honesty together. But Audrey kept denying it. which of course meant that he had to keep Clarissa a secret too. They did keep in contact though. Audrey was annoyed to notice that although all throughout his absence from home he had seemingly been almost unable to even text her back, let alone ever call, now he seemed unable to even make it through dinner without picking up his phone. He said it was work, but why would work make him laugh like that? When Audrey spotted the name Clarissa on the screen one night, she couldn't help herself. She lost it. Here was Anton, always accusing her of cheating, while all the while texting some other woman, some Clarissa. Clarissa who? Who was this woman that had her husband laughing and smiling at his phone in a goopy fashion like a teenager in love? Anton wouldn't tell her. He denied everything. She was being crazy, as per usual. Audrey was always so dramatic, and now her imagination or guilty conscience or whatever was playing tricks on her. His phone hadn't said Clarissa at all. It had said classified. And of course he couldn't show her to prove it. They were classified documents. The argument went on for hours, escalating to be about far more than who was cheating on whom. Anton criticised everything about Audrey that he could think of, from the poor way she kept up with her own personal hygiene, to how she parented, didn't clean the house, and never treated him with the love and respect he deserved as her husband. Anton left the apartment that night, and Audrey didn't know where he went. She cried herself to sleep in their bed, huddled up in the blankets, feeling more alone and depressed than she'd ever thought it was possible to be. Her chest literally ached with sadness. What had happened to her? Audrey had lost all sense of herself, and by the time Anton came back home 3 days later, the apartment was an absolute pigsty, and Audrey herself was a drunk mess on the floor, while little Cassandra cried in a dirty nappy nearby. Anton had never seen anything like it. He'd known that Audrey was a little lax, but this was downright negligent. Anton lost his cool in that moment. They hadn't always had a perfect marriage. He knew he'd made some mistakes along the way too, but what was Audrey thinking of? Drinking on the floor while their child cried uncared for nearby? She was a terrible mother, a worse wife, and Anton was done with her. And that brings us to the end of Chapter 10 of Audrey Whitman, The Audacious Maid. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can tune in soon to hear the next chapter. And hey, maybe think about sharing my channel with a friend. Or don't. It's your life. Anyway, bye!